And I think that for most of us, and by the way, and that doesn't just have to be curing cancer and, feeding the hungry. I believe that every business and every job has that potential of being noble and of uplifting us, that it can be meaningful depending upon how you engage in it and how the business is operating. So for me, I looked at, one, there was a need. So as with any business, right, you look out for, is there a need or a service that I'm going to be providing that isn't being provided now, or I can provide in a better way? So in this particular instance, it turns out that although we have 40,000 food banks in America, the number of food insecure is not shrinking, it's actually growing. So something's wrong with that model. And as it turned out, as I looked into it when I was at Harvard, 38% of the people that desperately need these services won't use them. And they won't use them because of dignity. They won't use them because they're embarrassed. Because as human beings, one of our core needs is to feel a sense of dignity, a sense of self-worth. And there's something inherent in a donor-recipient relationship that lessens the recipient. You always feel less power because I'm giving you something. No one, it turns out, at the end of the day, feels great about a charitable handout. So I wanted to try to craft, okay, how do I reach those people in a way that goes back to this conscious capitalism idea of that all of us can create a culture of care and concern that allows for basic human needs to be met, like dignity. And I actually believe that in retail, you flip it. In retail, the retailer's got to earn the patronage from the customer. That if you're not treating them warmly and friendly, you're not giving them a good product that they want. It's not a great price, or in this particular case with Daily Table, it was trying to creatively use one problem, which is all this wasted food, to help lower the cost and solve the problem of the other, which is how do we create delicious, nutritious food that people should be eating, but at prices that compete with junk food, prices that compete with food that we shouldn't be eating, but unfortunately, when you're food insecure, you need to eat. And it came out of an awakening of, as with many things, an understanding of the nature of the problem, which is that certainly in America, obesity is the face of hunger. That hunger in America is not a shortage of calories, it's a shortage of nutrients. So Daily Table also was designed around this idea of it's possible to do good. It's a nonprofit, by the way, only because the tax systems that are set up in the United States are designed to reward grocers, growers, manufacturers, et cetera, that if they have excess product or anything left over, instead of throwing it out, we'll give you an enhanced deduction if you donate that to a 501c3, a nonprofit in the food space. So if I wasn't a nonprofit, there'd be little incentive, there'd be a lack of incentive for someone to donate to Daily Table. So that structure was more or less set by tax code. But I think that the fundamental basics of it, which is that it's around going out and finding a need, that's there, looking for a creative way to solve it that delivers a sense of a higher purpose, and delivers a sense of a fully human experience where people that shop with us feel validated and feel better when they walk out than when they walk in. And that's, I think, critical of all businesses. At the end of the day, really conscious businesses want to engage with their customers in such a way that whether you're a B2B or you're a retail consumer, whatever, you want your customers of your business to feel better, to feel there was a value exchange that actually at the end of the day made them feel a sense of deeper worth and or of value. They learned something. They got something of value. That something of value can be simple as the food you eat, or it could be something as noble as, medical care or education or anything else.
So in other words, finding the need and then injecting a purpose within that need before you start considering structure and the business plan and everything else is what I'm hearing.
Well, yeah, and I guess that for me, a conscious business is one where you don't write in the business plan, here's how we build to flip it. We're gonna position it such that in 2 years we can sell it on the marketplace, get 10x, and we all go off and play golf or buy an island somewhere. I think that's great, but that's not to me what really conscious businesses are run on. They're based on value creation throughout the chain. And I think that the instance in this case is you look for the need, you look for that, that's something you're going to do that someone else wants. It's a service or a good, and you're going to do it in a manner that isn't just driven by a derivative of maximizing profit, but instead it's maximizing value. And when you focus really on the value chain, I think you end up with longer term thinking. You end up with a richer proposition.
And of course, that value chain flows through all the stakeholders, the culture of the company that you're going to build, the leadership team, all the vendors and everybody else that is a part of that thing. So that's the beauty of how a more conscious business kind of comes together that way.
Yeah, and I would say that, and it pays it forward. For instance, I was with Trader Joe's for 19 years and then had a chance to write the business plan on how the company is going to grow outside of California, and then led the charge here back to the East back in '96, 20 years ago. And when we got back here, Trader Joe's is primarily a private label company. We got back here and, we're going to open up 1, 2, 3 stores the first couple months here in Boston. And we went out to people asking for private label. Now, many of the companies, the really great companies we wanted to deal with, either didn't private label, hadn't heard of Trader Joe's, or it's like, well, wait, you got 1 or 2 or 3 stores. I mean, why would we private label for you? But what happened was our supply chain in the West, which was really primarily where our supply chain was strongest, they'd go to shows, they'd talk up, oh my gosh, did you hear Trader Joe's going to the East? Yeah, you want to get in with them. They really treat the vendor well. They'll work with you. They partner with you. They're good to their word. They pay you on time, et cetera, et cetera. So by the time we got back here, people that had never private labeled for anybody else ever said, yeah, we've talked about it internally. We'd be willing to do it. We'd be willing to, work with you in the way in which your model is designed, Trader Joe's, because frankly, we've heard such great things about your reputation, that you're an honorable business, that you pay your bills on time, that you do what you say you're going to do. Then you look for partnerships with vendors. And you don't look at vendors as something to extract value from, as something as your competitors, as a win, that's something you've got to dominate, but you truly look at them as your partners in bringing value to our customers. And I think that when you take that on an attitude of value creation in a stakeholder model, you consciously or unconsciously are also paying it forward because it sends ripple effects out through areas you wouldn't. Trader Joe's never would have guessed, for instance, 10 years earlier that it'd be going east. It kind of thought of itself as just this West Coast company. But by treating vendors right, it ended up having its just residual effect when we went east of people going, hey, I want to do business with you. I've heard great things.
Interesting how that all played out. In the conscious capitalism, Doug, I want to go back to the term itself. We've talked a lot in the last half an hour about capitalism and business, but let's go to the word conscious. Our conscious capitalism movement is also, there's a nonprofit, Conscious Capitalism, Inc., that started this whole thing, and is a collection of a bunch of business leaders and businesses. Let's talk about what conscious means. Can you spend just a few minutes in your definition, and especially when you look at all the men and women who have come into the movement that you've met, how would you share some insights with our audience about what does being a more conscious business person mean? Maybe how does one open those windows and those doors to become more so? If you could just address that for a minute.
Yeah, that's a great question, Kevin. So, first of all, it doesn't mean just to be conscious of capitalism. It really, to me, capitalism is this fantastic, powerful, system that we've created for social cooperation and human progress. But the conscious part is where the human interacts with that system. And this is that part that we didn't talk a lot about leadership. Because I think conscious capitalism really emphasizes that who you are as a leader impacts and is tremendously important in the success of your business. And that I believe that leaders, for instance, Ann Rhodes, who was co-founder of JetBlue and gave a talk at Conscious Capitalism in San Diego a couple years ago, has a saying that goes something like this that I really like, which is, leaders drive culture. Culture drives behaviors. Behaviors drive performance, and performance drives results. So for a lot of people, they want better results. Instead of going right after the result, they as the leader should step back and think about, where's my consciousness? Where's my awareness? What kind of culture am I creating here? Am I really creating a conscious culture that embraces, my team, my community, that holds higher purpose and standards? And if so, how can I further deepen and broaden that culture? And that's the way that I think it moves down through behaviors and performance into results. I think that conscious capitalism, first of all, is aware of the role that a leader plays. And that as some people say, leaders get the organizations they deserve. That to some degree we know, there's a bunch of studies on this, that leadership is often, that part, and your awareness and of framing things, that your map you bring to the world is critical in the way you approach and your success in interacting with the world. And so conscious capitalism would say that, one, that first of all, be aware of the interdependencies that are out there. Be aware of the fact that no business is an island unto itself. No person is an island unto himself. That you are deeply ingrained in a society and a community. That you have tremendous interdependencies and interaction that is really core. That don't lose sight of that. And I think conscious business has to do with that deeper emotional intelligence and spiritual intelligence, if I could use the phrase, that I think that conscious leaders have around systems thinking, around the value and the important critical element that emotional intelligence plays. I think that that just being a really bright leader today, certainly in conscious business, isn't enough. That you've got to have skills in, particularly if you're looking at cultures, you've got to have skills in communicating and living and walking and breathing a richer, fuller human life that includes our values, our purposes, our emotions, etc. And so I think that really good leaders understand that they bring all of themselves to a workplace, and they are congruent in their values, that they have to walk their own talk, that they've got to, that it flows from them. And if they're unhappy with results, they should more likely look in a mirror than point fingers.
That's beautifully said, Doug, because that's really, I think, this whole conscious capitalism movement that we're seeing out here, and in conversations, especially we were just back in April at our national conference, that the whole conscious leadership seems to be more of a cornerstone to make all the other pillars come alive and align and thrive.